listener name, some of these reports you sent over about this tropical storm Milton kind of got me a little worried, not gonna lie. Sound like things could get pretty hairy down there in Florida.
Yeah, it's definitely one to watch.
We've got these articles from Source 1 name and Source 2 name, and they're both saying pretty much the same thing. Milton's one to keep an eye on. But you know what's weird?
What's that?
This whole M-storm thing, forming this early in October.
Right.
It's just not typical. It's not usually how this works.
Yeah, it is pretty unusual to see a storm this developed this early in the season.
Definitely not the norm.
And, it just goes to show this hurricane season, it's been something else.
It's been wild.
Super active. And that's what's worrying. It only takes one of these storms to really shake things up.
Especially for Florida. I mean, come on. It's like hurricanes just have a GPS locked on that state. But okay, let's get into it. Milton's path. Both articles seem to agree it's headed straight for Florida's west coast, landfall sometime midweek. And Source 1 name, they actually mentioned Tampa.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they said Tampa's right in the possible landfall zone. That's got to be making people nervous.
Oh, absolutely. When you're talking about Tampa Bay, one of the biggest concerns with hurricanes is always storm surge. And the way that Bay is shaped, it makes it particularly vulnerable.
Is that right?
Think of it like, imagine a bathtub, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start pouring water into one end, the water level is going to rise much more quickly. And because of how Tampa Bay is, it kind of funnels the water in, creating this, you could have really bad floods, even if the hurricane isn't that strong.
Wow, I never thought about it that way.
Right, and it's not just the storm surge either. Both of these articles, they use this phrase, near major hurricane.
Yeah, near major hurricane. Doesn't exactly sound reassuring, does it?
Not at all.
And they're saying 110 mile per hour winds. Okay, help me out here. Remind me, what category hurricane are we talking about with that kind of wind speed?
So 110 miles per hour puts it right on the edge of a Category 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is when things start to get, when you start to see really serious damage. Structures, trees, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that's serious stuff.
But here's the thing. Even if Milton doesn't quite hit that Category 3 intensity, it doesn't mean it can't still be really dangerous.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in those categories.
Exactly.
But every storm's different.
Yeah.
So what else should we be looking at with Milton? Besides the wind, obviously.
Well, rainfall is a big one. Even before it makes landfall, they're expecting some pretty heavy rain across Florida.
Really?
Yeah, like as early as Sunday. And that's on top of what's already been a wet year for Florida.
Oh, man.
Like Source 2 name mentioned that Tampa's already over its normal rainfall for the year.
Wow.
So even if the winds end up being not as bad as they're saying, flooding could be a huge issue.
Double whammy.
Exactly.
Vulnerable to storm surge, already soaked from rain. And speaking of things adding up, Source 2 name, they made this comparison to Hurricane Helene.
Oh, right.
The one that just slammed the southeast.
Yeah, and, Florida's still recovering from that, right? That wasn't even 2 weeks ago.
Crazy.
And now they might get hit with another major storm in the same area.
Back to back.
It really shows you how damaging these back-to-back hurricanes can be. Resources get stretched thin, recovery takes longer. The whole thing, the impact just gets multiplied.
Yeah, it makes you think about the bigger picture. It's not just wind and rain. It's about these communities, and how they bounce back after getting hit again and again. So, listener name, we've gone through a ton of info about Tropical Storm Milton. Early formation, unusual for an M storm, could be a big one, headed towards a really vulnerable area, and lots of rain. What does all this mean for you?
Well, like always, it comes down to being prepared.
Right.
If you already have a hurricane plan, dig it out. Take a look, make sure it's still current.
Exactly.
And if you don't have a plan, well, now's the time.
Never too late.
It's never too late. The National Hurricane Center, that's going to be your best resource, hands down. They've got the most up-to-date info, most accurate forecasts.
For sure.
And if you happen to be in an evacuation zone, please, please, please listen to your local officials. If they tell you to get out, get out.
Don't mess around with that. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when a storm's coming at you, but having a plan, staying informed, it makes a huge difference.
Huge.
And it's not just those right on the coast, like you were saying. Inland flooding, those heavy rains, that's a real threat too.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody needs to be aware of the risks no matter where they are in relation to the coast. Have a plan, just in case. Better safe than sorry.
Couldn't agree more. It's amazing how fast these storms can form, develop.
It's true.
Hopefully Milton weakens before it makes landfall.
Fingers crossed.
But even so, can't hurt to be prepared.
Right. Couldn't agree more. This whole thing, it's got me thinking. Even if you're not in a hurricane zone, It's good to think about what natural disasters could happen where you live.
That's a good point.
Have a plan, just in case. You just never know.
That's such an important takeaway for everyone listening. Be prepared, stay informed, be resilient wherever you are. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive listener name. Stay safe out there.